Tell me about this.
Well, we attended the marquetry class,
Yeah.
and I did a few pieces. This one is what I dedicated to Sherry.
What I wanted to start with when we talk about your story is those beautiful pictures that we all saw of you arriving home and being reunited with your family, with Sherry and your 2 children. How did that moment feel for you, stepping off that plane, back onto British soil and then seeing your family again?
When I think about it now, it's still for me difficult to grasp all of that, because there were many times that I dreamt about Sherry, about my kids, and I used to wake up to the ceiling of my coffin, we used to call, because the ceiling was about half a meter above our heads. So even waking up to a ceiling which was about a few meters away from you, it was unbelievable. And there were times that I used to dream and I used to wake up to that, and it is such an anticlimax. Then you wake up to your cell. Sometimes in my dreams I used to test myself. I used to pinch myself to feel the pain, so that to make sure that this is not a dream.
So it's still hard to finally realise that this is now your reality.
Even last night, I was touching Sherry's hands,
touching
to
her,
make sure that yes, this is reality. This is happening. We became serious when she was 17.
Yeah.
We were boyfriends and girlfriends, and we are still boyfriends and girlfriends. So
that's a long time.
Without, I mean, disregarding whatever we have written and signed, we are.
That's 50 years, isn't it?
She is my best friend in life.
When did you actually believe that you were coming home? What was the moment that you thought, this is actually happening, I'm going home?
It was touch and go up until the last moment.
And why was that?
Because the Iranian authorities were reluctant, although they had told me that I was going to be released, but you cannot exactly be sure. And I'm really grateful to Stephanie Alcock. She did a great job. Up until the last moment, she made sure that she was accompanying us to the aircraft. And when we took off, I mean, she did her job fantastically.
So do you mean you didn't, even when you were at the airport, you were thinking it was only when the wheels went up,
yes,
and you were in the air, that you thought this is real?
Even then, I was looking through the window to see if we are being accompanied by any other aircraft. And when we actually left the Iranian airspace, then I was sure that there was no point of return.
Going back to August the 13th, 2017, when you were arrested, tell me about why you were in Iran, what you were doing that day, and then what happened.
Well, my mom lives in Iran, and she's nearly 90 years old, and she had knee problems, and we arranged and we had a surgery for a knee replacement. So one day when I was going to the local market to have my suitcase repaired, its zip didn't work properly. As I went down the road in our street, suddenly a car pulled over, and 4 men, I think it was 4, they jumped out and said, "Are you Mr. Ashoori?" And I said, "Yes." And said, one of them took the suitcase from me, and the other one said, "Can you please sit in the back?" And I sat in the back seat. 2 sat on my sides, and the 2 others sat in the front, and they started driving. And I was wondering, am I being kidnapped, or what is it about? So as we got into the motorway, one of them gave me a piece of paper, showed it to me, said, "Read it." And it was written on something like anti-espionage decree, that it was a court order that I should be arrested and be taken to a detention center. Then they told me to put on a blindfold on my eyes, and then I had to They told me to lie on, put my head on the laps of the person who was sitting next to me, so that I could hear the traffic and I could hear, feel the bumps and everything. But you cannot, you become disorientated when you're lying on your side on somebody's lap. We went into this house. I could, from the bottom of my blindfold, I could see very nice carpets. And they took me into a room and I sat there and my interrogator came and he...
You still blindfolded?
And it started from there. And when I was taken to 209, I was taken to a room, to a cell. And I was left there. The cell had lights, strong lights that never went off. There was the sound of this almost malfunctioning air conditioning system that was continuously going like that. And I think a couple of days I was there without anybody seeing me. And I didn't know what is going on until my first interrogation.
I mean, were you thinking, this is a misunderstanding, I haven't done anything?
They don't believe you. And I didn't know then the reason why I was there. Only long after that, we realized, when I was in prison, then when I realized that this relates to a debt that Britain had to pay to Iran.
You couldn't speak to anyone?
Nobody came to me. They were just giving the food through these little holes, and nobody was talking to me.
And when you say that they interrogated you, what did they do? They sat you in a room and insisted that you wrote things down of things you hadn't...
I'd rather not elaborate on that now.
Okay.
We shall leave that for later.
Sure. And, okay, let's talk about Evin Prison. You wrote something in The Guardian that I read very carefully. It's a prison that housed intellectuals and political prisoners. And you said in this article, I live in Evin Prison, Tehran, in the Valley of Hell. Is that how it was? Was it as if you were living in hell?
Literally, that was the Valley of Hell.
And
because in addition to your own suffering, you see the suffering of all the people who are around you. Each of them in their own different way. Marriages are breaking up. Families are disintegrating. And I was reasoning with myself that when I know that I'm innocent and I'm here, so everybody else can be innocent and be there.
That must be very hard to live with, knowing that the injustice of being imprisoned for no reason. Was that hard to live with?
Especially because if you look at the 68 years of my life, you will not see a single sign that I was having any political leniencies towards any faction. I mean, I was mainly into cosmology, I was mainly into engineering, physics, things that I loved. And the innovation that I made in Iran was a certain type of concrete formwork that I managed to get a gold award for that.
The account I read was actually really hard to read. I think it must have been unimaginable to live it. You wrote about food so foul that only the most needy prisoners would eat it. You talked about the unbearable stench from the open sewers. You talked about the windowless room, the bedbugs, the cockroaches, the rats, the faeces floating along this open sewer. What was the worst thing, or is that just impossible to say because it was all just so awful?
The worst thing, these are the physical things that you see, but the suffering of the people who are there. A few of them ended up in mental hospital. I mean, these are the more pronounced effects.
You said, again, your testimony about fellow prisoners, you said that you could name at least half a dozen who'd attempted suicide, at least 2 who'd succeeded.
I have their names with me, but I cannot reveal them, but yeah.
You said there were a dozen taken to a mental hospital. Some had suffered permanent damage due to electrical shock treatment.
Yes.
You said 24 had developed severe post-arrest medical conditions, and you said at least 2 captives were killed on their interrogations.
Or to have said that they committed suicide. One of them was Kavus Mami. The environmentalists. I mean, such fine people, such nice people. Murat Tabaz, who, he should be here with us. He needs medical attention, and he's not getting it. I mean, we cannot celebrate anything without them being here. I am feeling so bitter that he was not on the same plane with us. And I'm not going to be quiet until he is back and until the rest of the dual nationals are released. I feel that I have left such fine people.
You've written about, you did attempt.
Yes, that was when I was in the interrogation center. And I made a few attempts. One of them, the scars are on my wrist, when I wanted to cut my wrist. These are the, well, after 4 years they are improving a little bit, but, and they barged in and they undressed me and they took everything away. That wasn't successful, so I remembered the books that I used to see, for example, the people who were starving in Auschwitz. So I thought perhaps if I make a passive hunger strike, because you usually you do a hunger strike to protest against something. Because of the threats, which I'm not going to delve into, so I decided not to be. And I remember they were giving eggs, boiled eggs, for breakfast that morning, and I stopped eating. For 4 days, I did not even drink water. Then I thought perhaps my blood would thicken, and if I have a stroke, then I'll be handed over to...
You didn't drink water?
I didn't want to be, so I didn't want to drink water, I didn't want to drink to eat anything.
You lost 17 kilograms in 17 days.
Yes, and that is when my interrogator called me, and he said, we are going to show some kindness, and we are going to send you to a suite, and that suite is a cell of the same size, but with 3 other people in it. I cried and I insisted, because I was telling myself that within the next month, job is accomplished, my mission is accomplished. And I started crying and insisting that I don't want to be with people, I want to be in the cell. Of course, they had discovered that I was not eating. So they moved me to that cell, and the people in that cell, they didn't succeed in persuading me to eat that evening, but from the next day, I stopped my hunger strike.
There were some moments of hope, companionship, resilience that you've shown in spades, but you wrote powerfully about the University of Evin and prisoners given each other's lessons. I mean, was that something that sustained you, that helped you? Tell us about the university.
Well, you could see talented people around you. This person is a specialist, he has got a PhD in quantum physics. The other one has got a PhD, who was a university professor. Up until the moment of his arrest, he was busy lecturing at the university, teaching economics, or similar cases like that. So you would actually get to know these people, and you would offer if they could teach you a little bit of that. And to escape from loneliness, they would also welcome that. So once I decided that we should form a group, and that started with a poetry group.
Okay.
And we were about 8 or 9. We used to sit together, and they used to... we had this satirist writer, I cannot name him, and he started teaching us how to write short stories. And some of them were my role models. I had a friend who had an execution sentence over his head, and I was learning a lot from him. Somehow we try to treat each other. There isn't any other choice.
What did you learn from him?
Resilience, resistance. Because every morning when he woke up, say at the middle of the night, he could be called for to be taken to the gallows. I mean, how can you live a life like that?
I don't know.
We had a few who had execution sentences.
And you don't know what's going to happen to them now?
No.
Will you be able to keep in touch? Is it very difficult?
Very difficult. Very difficult.
That must be hard.
Yes. I think the best thing for us is that we should concentrate not on us, because we are now safe, we are here. We should concentrate on the people we have left behind, be it dual nationals or mono-nationals. And a lot of effort is needed that things like this won't happen. Many of them are innocent, and their lives are being destroyed.
Just finally, about Evin Prison, you wrote this: I have to stop the feeling of pure rage or self-pity. Break isn't a choice, only survival. I'm not the same person who stepped into the prison. So, I mean, this is maybe a hard question to answer, but how do you feel now? Do you feel joyous? Do you feel furious? Are you relieved? Are you all of those things? Are you something else?
It's a mixture of all of that.
Yeah.
I cannot be joyful because I've got friends back there who are going through the same suffering. How can I celebrate? How can I be happy? It's momentary. For example, you see, perhaps you see a clip that my son bought fish and chips for me, for example, and it was so nice eating fish and chips after nearly 5 years, or having my first beer. These are little moments which are quite nice. They are quite important. But when you think holistically on the matter, you cannot be feeling happy.
But do you feel guilty? I mean, you can't feel guilty that you've been released. It wasn't your fault that you were imprisoned.
You always tell yourself, is it that thing that I could do or the other thing that would make the change? So that another person would be accompanying me in that aeroplane. Again, I stress on the fact that Morad is one of them. But there are many others. But I'm not at liberty to name them. They're there. And the feeling, the suffering is even more intensified when you are left behind. We have had people, we went to their send-offs at the foot of the staircase. We used to clap for them, we used to cheer, and as they were leaving, we could feel the positive atmosphere that we have someone who is being released from this cage. And we would congratulate each other as well. And hoping and wishing that, I hope you will be the next one. And the other one would say, you would be the next one. But in your heart, you were somehow feeling that, when is it going to be my turn? So when I was walking up those stairs, waving at everybody to say goodbye, I could see that, you feel that you're betraying them. You feel that you don't deserve this. It is them, because they have been so good to you.
But you do deserve it.
Everybody deserves it. And I'm not going to be quiet until I see all of them back home, and the mono-nationals who are there to be released, or to be retried at least, by a fair judge.
Let's go on to you coming home and the deal that the government struck. Nazanin, who you flew home with, said yesterday that she should have been freed 6 years ago. It shouldn't have taken 5 foreign secretaries to secure her release. you were held captive for nearly 5 years under 4 different foreign secretaries. Did you feel forgotten?
I agree with Nazanin 100%. She in fact put her finger on the right button by saying that. She should have been here years ago. If that debt was paid, that wasn't a ransom, that was a debt that the British government owed. It should have been paid, and if it was paid, perhaps none of this would have happened. So, yeah, I feel a bit angry.
Sherry tried to get an audience with the Prime Minister, with Boris Johnson, to talk about your case. Her letters were never answered?
It took even a punishment, because I received my second indictment, partly because of the voice message I sent to Boris Johnson. So I risked my safety, but I managed to convey that message to him. Unfortunately, he did not spend even 5 minutes to give a telephone call to my family to say that you are there. I see you.
Tell us about the voicemail. Explain.
That was during the time of the COVID thing that I was angry because at the same time I was blaming those who captured us. I was blaming the British government. Why don't you do anything about it? Do we need a dead person in our hands so that you would start shaking and moving and doing something about it? And I was really angry, and that's why I decided to send that voice message, hoping that it would make a change.
And this was in what, 2019?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
And Sherry did not get a response at all. No. And subsequently...
And it took Richard a hunger strike.
Yes. So you sent Boris Johnson a voice note in 2020 to try and get your case heard by the PM. Did Sherry hear back from him?
No. Unfortunately. She made many attempts, and all of them were unsuccessful.
And since you've come home, the Prime Minister's written to you and Sharon would like to see you.
Last night we received a letter. Now he is eager to see us.
How do you feel?
How would you interpret that?
Well, how do you feel about that?
I think that it's a bit of opportunism involved in it. At the same time as all of this has happened under his command. So one could argue that it was the British government, the present British government, which succeeded in doing that, which is correct. At the same time, we could say that, why didn't you contact us, my family, and now you are eager to do that? How would you expect us to absorb that? How would you expect us to think of you with this letter now? Why couldn't this letter be sent 5 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? Why now?
And will you see him, or you not decided?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Just to go back to you and Sherry, you studied in the UK before returning to Iran, and you raised your children in Iran, but you came back to the UK 17 years ago, and you spent so much of your life here. Do you think part of some of the difficulties with your case as well was because there was a feeling that because you didn't spend your entire life in the UK that you weren't properly British? Was that something that was underlying this, and that must aggrieve you if it was, surely?
This is one of the criticisms that I have to make, is that when they were my lawyers were applying for diplomatic protection.
Which Nazanin got, right?
Yes. Our Britishness came on the question.
Okay.
How British are you? How British should I be? This is the place that we love to be. This is the place we return to. This is the place that we raised our kids, and now both of them have been educated, your university educated people who are actually serving in this country. How British should you be? And yet we were not recognized as that. At least practically we were not.
That must make you feel quite angry.
Yes.
And particularly for Sherry, because she was here trying to get you that formal diplomatic protection, that diplomatic protection status. It elevates the case to becoming a formal state-to-state issue, so it can make a real difference, can't it?
Yes, which we did not benefit from it.
Could you go back to Iran?
I dare not.
That's
don't want to go through the same ordeal.
That's a loss too, though, isn't it? Because your parents.
Yes, my mom is there, and I'm worried about her.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I'm sorry for that. That's
extremely worried about her.
There was a fundraiser to pay your fine for your release. What happened to that money, and how much did you raise, and what are you going to do with it?
First of all, I have to express my gratitude to the British public who were so supportive. Sherry had to raise that money overnight. They took everybody, the family members, their credit cards, whatever they had to come with that sum.
How much did you have to pay?
Nearly 20, that was 33,000 euros.
And the government didn't pay that money for you?
No.
Okay.
And then they started doing this fundraising, and I'm really grateful. Now we have exceeded that amount, and what we intend to do is to use part of it for the family to come to get on its feet.
Yes.
And the rest, we are going to put it in good use. Perhaps Amnesty International is going to be a good candidate.
That's great. Well, it must have been hard for Sherry when you were keeping the house going.
There are many deaths.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Elika sacrificed a good portion of her business campaigning for me.
I can.
Aryan behind the scene, but he was actually doing the same.
Okay, well, look, let's talk about your last week and coming home. Now, you've told me about the champagne on the plane. I heard that you had a beer in the garden as well.
Yes.
Did you have a beer? What was the first thing you chose to eat?
It was English breakfast.
British breakfast.
Again, bacon.
Was that
bacon
good?
I love very much. And Sherry has become not a vegetarian, but she doesn't take. So she was sitting next to me, and I could see that she was taking all the bits of bacon in her plate and was transferring it to my plate.
So extra portions for you. Well, there you go. And what did you do? What did you all do at the weekend? Because you had your children with you, and
yes. In the safe house that we were looked after.
Yeah.
First class.
Was that lovely?
That was amazing. Yes.
And the dogs? Were the
and
dogs
the dogs,
there?
yeah. And Romeo recognized me.
I'm going to ask you one more thing. It's your birthday next month.
8th of April.
Yeah, how are you going to celebrate?
I leave it to Sherry and the kids. But again, it is not going to be a full celebration. Unfortunately, until the main celebration is when Morad Tahbaz returns together with the rest of the dual nationals. Then we are going to raise our glasses of champagne all together. That will be my birthday, that will be my Nowruz, that will be the day that I imagine should happen, and I expect for it to happen any moment.
Okay, Anoosheh, thank you so much. Thanks for talking to me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Same here, thank you.